A crew member, Alexa, recently reached out to me and she asked me, Lexi, are there any books, videos, and/or resources you would recommend for a baby astrologer like me? Sure, I'd be happy to share with you some of my favorite astrological resources. I'm Lexi, your local lightworker. I'm a tarot reader and an astrologer. And today, in this astrology clip, I'm going to be talking to you about my favorite astrological resources. I think the first person I should begin with is a person that doesn't need a lot of introduction. I think that a lot of you are already very familiar with her. This is the astrologer Liz Green. She's a Virgo sun. We'll be sharing the sun signs of some of these astrologers because I think it's important for you guys to keep in mind whether they might be a suitable guide for you. Look at the position of Saturn and Jupiter in your birth chart and see whether any of these astrologers' suns falls conjunct your Saturn or Jupiter. Saturn and Jupiter in our birth chart, they show us, amongst a lot of other things, our teachers. Saturn teachers are usually quite heavy, quite stern, but the things that they teach you tend to last for a very long period of time, so they are invaluable resources, while Jupiterian teachers have a more playful, philosophical, fun way of teaching you some important life lessons. So check whether the placements of the astrologers I'm going to be discussing in this clip falls on any of your Saturn-Jupiter placements, whether conjunct, trine. Those are usually the really important ones. If you have a square or an opposition, then that would show you're going to learn in a very frustrated, interrupted way from these individuals. Let's get back to Liz Green. So she wrote a book that I find incredibly useful. This is called Relating. And if you're an astrologer that is focusing on relationships astrology, this is the go-to book to access. Liz actually takes us through the mythological underpinnings of a lot of the things that she's mentioning, and she uses a particular Jungian lens to describe some of the observations she's making regarding the position of our personal planets. Let me read to you a little bit from the content. So we have here the treatment of the birth chart, the moon, the sun. We also have Mercury, Venus, and Mars taken together. We have Jupiter and Saturn taken together. And then the influence of the outer planets. I love the fact that Liz is focused on the elemental differences between people and how a person that has more air or water could relate very differently than an individual that is more fiery or an individual that has a predominance of earth in their chart. We also have here the Beauty and the Beast. She likes to refer to folklore. She likes to use myths in her descriptions, and this is why she's such a wonderful astrologer, because as she is a Jungian psychologist as well, she appeals to popular archetypes. And where can we find archetypes better than in myths and in folklore? It's absolutely wonderful. Fairy tale astrology, right? We also have here a specific chapter on the sex life of the psyche, so the sexual imprint and patterns that begin in our minds, our conscious and unconscious minds, and how these influence the positions of our Sun, Mercury, and Pluto. And then we have here the Saturn cycle, the Uranus cycle, the individual progress chart, and a very useful final chapter on relating in the Aquarian age. So this is the book I would recommend, Liz Green's Relating, but I do see Liz as an authority on anything related to Saturn. So if you are wondering what is the position of my natal Saturn telling me about my life's hardships, about my karma, maybe you're trying to understand your clients' charts, maybe you're trying to figure out what does a Saturn in Sagittarius can bring to the table, what is a Saturn in Aquarius all about, well, I would strongly recommend that you use this resource, also by Liz. It's called Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil, and it's phenomenal. Liz has a no BS way of explaining a lot of the astrological concepts. She looks at the challenging aspects of a specific sign. She never glorifies the sun signs. She just tells it like it is, and she's got an encyclopedic knowledge. So you will learn so much from her. Liz Green, one of my all-time favorite astrologers. Now, another important astrologer and one that I happen to learn a lot from is Stephen Arroyo. And I have here the core foundational book that taught me about karma in astrology. Stephen is very good at translating Buddhist and Hindu mythology and knowledge to a Western public, to the Western population. And he's actually one of the first that started this practice in the middle of the 70s and throughout the entirety of the 80s. So Stephen is a Libra Sun astrologer, and I highly recommend that you use this book to begin with. This is called Astrology, Karma, and Transformation, the Inner Dimensions of the Birth Chart. And as I did with Liz, I want to also walk you through a little bit the contents of this book. Stephen is really preoccupied with transformation. How can you change a very difficult situation into a source of wisdom? How can you learn from past trauma, past mistakes, difficult or sick or toxic family dynamics? How can you overcome this? And what happens when planets are transiting as well? So he's got a very dynamic understanding of astrology. He is also a very broad-minded thinker and a very good analyst. As a Libra Sun, I would expect that from him. So we have here a combination of chapters that deal with the transformation of the inner aspects of the self, the Sun and Moon. We have here chapter 3, Uranus and Neptune, chapter 4, Pluto. So he dedicates a whole chapter to Pluto and the subject of the reincarnation. We also have here as well Saturn, a whole chapter on Saturn, nature and cycles. So we look here at the aspects of Saturn, the transits, and of course the infamous Saturn return. And then we have a whole chapter on karma. We look at how Uranus, Neptune, and Saturn can introduce an individual's karma. So the consequences of their past lifetime actions and how they are currently shaping the experiences that they have in the present incarnation. So this is a really useful book if you're trying to understand what karma is all about, especially if you're looking at doing an interpretation of maybe past life astrology, or you're looking at some sort of Akashic records exploration, and if you're particularly interested in the influence of the outer planets, so not necessarily the personal one so much, although Stephen does talk about the Sun and the Moon. He is specifically focused on Pluto, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. So if you want to know more about that, Stephen is the person to turn to. I also see Stephen as the utmost authority on anything related to Jupiter. So similar to how Liz is to me an authority in anything related to Saturn, Stephen speaks a lot about the influence of your natal Jupiter or transiting Jupiter and how you can extract the most benefits from this really lucky transit. So I would highly suggest the second book by him. I don't have it materially, but I have it as an ebook, and it's really good at helping you understand how can you work with one of the strangest but most prolific energy in the universe, happiness. Now, another important astrologer that got me through the dark night of the soul is Donna Cunningham. She is a Cancer Sun astrologer and psychotherapist that specifically is focused on healing trauma, and as a consequence, she's written 2 phenomenal books on the Moon and Pluto. So the first book I would recommend, I don't have it materially here, but I can show it to you in an image over here and on my phone, is Moon Sign. If you want to understand what the moon is about, if you want to grasp the unconscious nature of the moon and how it might play out in your life or in the life of the people you're trying to interpret for, then this is the go-to resource. Donna has a lot of practical experience of dealing with people that have been abused, both sexually and emotionally, people that are trying to recover from addiction, and she uses a lot of the examples from her own practice, and she applies this to the specific interpretation of how the moon plays out in an individual's chart. So her books are peppered with a lot of practical experience, and she uses a lot of charts to show you specifically how this influence can work. She's an excellent person to get you to cope with the rougher, darker aspects of life. Her second resource, which is Healing Pluto Problems. This is the core text that got me to truly and deeply understand on a more instinctive level, on a more lived level, what Pluto means. And especially if you're a Plutonic like I am, if you're a person that has Pluto on any of the core dimensions of your birth chart, on the ascendant, descendant, Imun Coeli, or midheaven, you are an individual that really needs to read this book. So this is about how can you work with the energy of intensity, deep transformation, and sorrowful loss. Pluto is an energy of random spontaneous shocks and trauma happening in your life. So understanding why these things might happen and how can you cope with the aftermath of a Pluto transit or prepare for one is going to be incredibly important. It's not an easy book to read, I'm going to tell you right now, because she does talk about the birth charts of certain criminals. She does talk about child sexual abuse, and it is a little bit difficult to digest in parts, but if you take your time with it and read a chapter a week or a month, then you allow the knowledge to sink in and you can extract so much wisdom from Donna's incredibly apt, pragmatic, and nurturing way in which she's describing these problems. I like it as well that in her books, she also speaks about healing with Bach flower essences, and she's giving you some sort of pragmatic exercises to try to help you get more into introspective work, because doing this kind of inner work can also heal you from moon-related or Pluto-related problems. So Donna Cunningham, one of the most nurturing and therapeutical astrologers that I personally had the chance to read. Another astrologer that I found to be a fountain of knowledge, she has such a wonderfully cosmic mind, is Bernadette Brady, a Pisces Sun sign. She is an individual with, again, an encyclopedic knowledge. She draws from so many different disciplines, especially from a philosophical perspective, and she connects astrology with cultural anthropology and cosmic studies. She is really famous for a book called Predictive Astrology. I haven't had the chance to read the book completely, but I have been paying attention to a lot of her lectures and a lot of the material that is out there. If you type Bernadette Brady on Google, you can find a wealth of audiovisual resources. She is a person that's very fun and engaging to listen to. She's one of those kind of like loopy scientists, and she's super fun and bubbly, and she usually makes fun of herself during the lectures. Just really, really entertaining to pay attention to her. I do have here her book, Chaos, Cosmos, and Astrology. This is a book that can be a little bit difficult to read and understand the first time when you open it, because it draws from so many different disciplines. However, it is peppered with examples, with pictures, so give yourself time to let this knowledge sink in. It was difficult for me as well to truly understand what is she actually talking about in the first 2 chapters, but if you are patient with it, it will make sense at the end. I think it's because she's a Pisces and she tends to go on these really random associations, and in the end, although it seems quite messy what she's trying to transmit, but in the end, it all comes together into a really beautiful conclusion. And every time I read her work or listen to her lectures, I have these aha moments. It's like, wow, I never thought of it from this perspective. Now, if you're more of a visual person like I am, you know, maybe you're a water sign, maybe you have Mercury in Pisces natally, maybe you just prefer to look at beautiful astrological pictures and you're not too engrossed in all the jibber jabber, well, then I highly recommend to you this book, Astrology by Taschen. It is a wonderful coffee table book, or at least so people tell me. I generally, when I have books, I like to use them. I don't just like to put them around somewhere to sit pretty for our guests. This is a book that I love to look through whenever I feel not so inspired or whenever I'm looking for ideas. This is because it is gorgeously decorated. It has a lot of paintings, murals, it has charts. You have a collection here of poems as well. I mean, it is just breathtaking. You can see here mythology, gods, goddesses, cosmic indications. It has specific aspects regarding the interpretation of each sun sign. It is looking as well at all the planets. It is looking as well at all the houses. Yeah, so look at this. It is gorgeous. I guess you can understand that this is Gemini, right? The divine twins. We have here a beautiful collection of tapestries, how astrology has been represented throughout time in many different cultures, also in pop art, not only in ancient Greek or Hellenistic times. You see here a representation of astrology in songs, in poems, in fashion art, in designs. It's just breathtaking. I absolutely love this book for the visual inspiration. Look at this, Capricorn. Gorgeous, right? The Library of Esoterica, Astrology, right? From Romanian. So to me, Stephen, Donna, Liz, and Bernadette are core foundational astrologers. They are the type of astrologers that were providing astrological information even before astrology reached the mainstream and became something so popular that everybody feels that they can contribute to. Keep in mind, guys, there are a lot of fake astrologers out there, a lot of people that actually don't take the time to study astrology in depth, but they do like to call themselves astrologers. So make sure that when you get your information, you get it from the proper resources. And it is my humble hope that by listening to this clip, you know where to turn to. Now, the astrologers that I've discussed are people that have been writing for years. And more recently, in the mainstream, in the zeitgeist, there are a couple of astrologers that I personally really like for their modern, hip, lighthearted approach to the study of astrology, especially in terms of looking at information regarding the astrology of love, sex, and romance. My go-to astrologers are definitely the Astro Twins. These are two Sagittarius Sun twin astrologers who have dedicated most of their career to the study of astrology from a very cool, lighthearted manner. They are incredibly funny. They are really, really hilarious. When you read their books, when you go and you check their website as well, you will always find articles that are both informative and also hilarious. I especially like their almost 500 pages book called The Astro Twins' Love Zodiac. This is a book by women for women. So it is exploring in depth each of the sun sign of a specific male individual. So for example, if you are dating a Capricorn and you want to find out how he might be in the bedroom, how he might introduce you to his parents, how he might even dump you, this is your go-to book. It has hilarious examples, and some of them, from my own experience of dating some of the men of the zodiac signs, I can tell you that they're very accurate. So this is the book that I love to actually dive into whenever I need a little pick-me-up, whenever I lose my faith in love and I feel that, oh man, who understands them? Well, the Astro Twins remind me to have a sense of humor about astrological placements, and also they are really, really informative. So let me just guide you through one of the chapters that they have here. Let's see what sun signs are we gonna open it up to. Sagittarius. Okay, so let me just show you how they organize knowledge about the Sagittarius man. Keep in mind, this is dealing with only sun sign astrology. Let me just show you how they structure the knowledge for the Sagittarius sun sign. So it begins here with some of the most classic information regarding a Sagittarius, the element, the personality, the natural habitat where you'll find him, what he does for a living, noteworthy and notorious Sagittarius men. Then Sagittarius, how to spot him in the wild. We also have here how he deals with money, family, love, sex, children. We have here as well pets, how he deals with your meltdowns as well, how he handles his meltdowns. We have here breakups as well. So what happens? How does a Sagittarius sun sign man behave during a breakup? And then we also have what he's all about. So we have here a whole section on what he wants in a woman as well, which is really fun. The Sagittarius man needs a smart woman, okay? What he wants from a relationship. We also have sex with a Sagittarius, a whole chapter on that. What are his turn-ons and turns-off? Yeah, you have a list here. If you're the list-abiding type, we have his moves, first moves, how he courts you. We also have he's in, how you know he's committed. And we also have here unfaithful Sagittarius, why he cheats. And Dig the Grave, It's Over, a chapter about how to cope with the breakup from a Sagittarian man. We also have an extensive chart of compatibility. So, for example, interpreting his signals, what does he mean by the moment when he gets quiet, doesn't call, calls a lot, tips for flirting and everlasting love. Everlasting love with the Sagittarius. Prep yourself for your first date with the Sagittarius, his first home visit, meeting his family. This is kind of like the more modern version of the rules, but in a fun astrological way. Saying goodbye, break up with a Sagittarius, getting over him when a Sagittarius dumps you. Oh yeah, and this is the matchmaker chart that I had in mind. I forgot that they actually have two. It's been a while since I read this. So let me just read you the description between you are a Libra and he is a Sagittarius. He thinks you are pretty charming but way too concerned with your looks. You think he's badly in need of an extra strength Prozac and Ritalin cocktail, and the common language that you guys share is light-hearted fun and activities, bowling, karaoke, movie rentals. There you go. So you see that a lot of things are being investigated in this awesome book. Keep in mind, it's a light-hearted text. You don't have to follow everything that they say step by step, right? But it is a beautiful way of getting to know a specific male sun sign in depth. And to, you know, it sparks up your imagination. If you're the kind of astrologer that is preparing to create synastry charts, or you're specifically interested in creating knowledge out there regarding love and romantic compatibility reports. Another really interesting book regarding love and sex, but more specifically looking at sex and sexual behavior, is the book by Myrna Lamb. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name, it's a bit hard to pronounce. This is The Astrology of Great Sex. I'm also going to put it over here so that you guys see the cover. What I love about this book is that I stumbled upon it while I was doing my own PhD research on love randomly, and I just thought, wow, a book about astrology and sex looking at romantic compatibility as well. Wow, this is for me. The beautiful thing is that this book is based on interviews with actual sun signs. So you get chapters based on the fantasies, sexual experiences, and deep sexual desires of each specific sun sign based on their own words. So Myrna did a qualitative study, an investigation, where she set out to interview a variety of different star signs about all of the aforementioned things. It's a really beautiful collection of actual interviews with people's experiences and actual desires. It's not something that she just made up or interpreted. This is the data that she collected on the field, and she put it into this beautiful book, which I highly recommend if you're interested in, again, interpreting sex, love, and relational astrology. Okay, so those were the more bookish resources that I could find. Also, some of my favorite astrologers. I do need to give an honorable mention here to two astrologers that I learned a lot from. The Eastern European astrologer Astrolada, or Lada Tuncheva. She's a Bulgarian-born astrologer that taught me so much just through the sheer volume of YouTube clips she has been releasing. So I remember that when I was looking for some sort of knowledge 5 or 6 years ago, when YouTube clips were not so populated by astrologers, I usually turned to her. She has a very approachable, beautiful way of describing astrological compatibilities. I learned a lot from her about the south node and the north node of the moon, Rahu and Ketu. So she is somebody I would highly recommend. Also, another astrologer that I love to bits is Mystic Medusa, who happens to share a birthday with me. We're both born on the 20th of March, obviously different years. She's based in Australia. She's incredibly mysterious. No one has seen how she looks like, but she writes these weekly think pieces. She has an amazing shop as well. She has an online oracle where you can spin the wheel and it gives you all sorts of interesting aphorisms and philosophical takeaways. I love her so much. She's writing a lot of reports as well on Neptune. She has a couple of binaural beats that you can listen to get you into the frequency of certain outer planets. And I learned a lot about Chiron and Lilith from her. She's excellent at looking at asteroids and the position of the planets. Of course, another astrologer that I like to turn to more recently, she's like my godmother, my fairy godmother, Pam Gregory. So again, a Pisces Sun, like Mystic Medusa. She is an astrologer that combines a lot of knowledge and factual information on bioenergy in combination with astrology. Check out her YouTube channel. She has also a book, You Don't Believe in Astrology, Do You? I haven't had the pleasure to read it yet, but you know, as with anything that Pam releases, I'm sure that it is something quite solid that you guys can turn to. Another astrologer I really enjoy is Simon at Raising Vibrations. He's been doing this work regarding Pluto and Pluto placements when I was researching this aspect, and this is how I came across him. He is the Scorpio Sun. He's got Saturn on the midheaven, so he's got this very serious way in which he comes across as he conveys knowledge on YouTube, but he's a person that just gets better with time, and he's got a very deep interpretation of the major transits of the planets, the ways in which you can look at the position of certain planets in specific houses. So he's excellent at describing houses and how houses contain a specific kind of energy that can help the soul to grow. He's an evolutionary astrologer, and I would highly recommend him if you are into the more Bernadette Brady, Pam Gregory kind of in-depth astrology that is also a little bit academic and complex. If you are more into the fun, love, and astrology side, then please go towards Mystic Medusa, towards Astrolada, towards the Astro Twins. You have a wealth of knowledge there. So decide now what kind of astrologer you want to become, and based on that, resources will come to you. They will open up to you. At the same time, I do need to say that for a lot of your astrological questions, you're not going to find a resource. This is because you are meant to come up with your own answers to the questions you might have as you are studying astrology. So I highly suggest that you spend a lot of time developing confidence regarding the way in which you personally view astrology, the way in which you understand planets, houses, transits, aspects. You need to give it your own personality, your own specific flavor. I strongly suggest that you have a moon book, a star book, a grimoire, a book of shadows, however you want to call it. Normally, book of shadows are for witches. They contain spells, they contain information regarding what works and what doesn't work according to the cycles of the moon. But you can also have one for your astrological knowledge in a similar way in which you can also have a dream diary or just an introspective diary if you're undergoing therapy. Doing this kind of work, collecting bits and bobs from a variety of different astrologers, writing down your own analysis on what a specific sun sign could mean to you, what a specific transit means to you, is an excellent way for you to develop your confidence as a budding astrologer. So you are also gaining knowledge from other people, but you're also creating your own knowledge, and that will be the selling point of your business. How well you manage to develop your own personal style of interpreting something. Having a moon book, having a star book is going to be incredibly useful. One wonderful way in which you can begin to acquire knowledge in your star book is to develop a moon diary. So as you guys know, the moon changes signs roughly about 1.5-2 days. So the moon changes very quickly in its cycle. It's a cycle that takes 28 days. So we have here a chance for you to record how you are feeling, what are the things that are happening to you each time the moon is in Aries, then what happens when the moon switches into Pisces, then what happens when the moon switches into Taurus, so on and so forth. You get the picture. I have been doing this exercise for a number of years now, and it has been giving me invaluable knowledge, personal, lived out, pragmatic experience of what it means to have a moon in Aries, of what it means to be under the influence of of a moon in Taurus? What are some of the things, the themes, the experiences that come up for me every time the moon is in the sign of Gemini? So that's one wonderful way to build your own knowledge. And you can do this with Saturn transit, you can do this with Jupiter transit. Jupiter changes signs once every year. Saturn takes a little bit longer, it takes 2.5 years. Pluto is incredibly long, it takes about 11 to 20 years depending on the sun sign and the transit that it takes. But I would suggest using these transits as a way for you to learn from experience. Experiential knowledge is invaluable, and I highly recommend that you start relying on it and build it day by day. Okay, so in the final part of this clip, I want to talk to you about astrological oracle decks. There are a couple of them that you might be interested in purchasing, and I strongly recommend that if you purchase an astrology oracle, don't just go by the intuitive interpretation of each of the images that you see. That is a great way to get in touch with an oracle deck, but I would highly suggest that you start reading and studying the booklets that these oracle decks usually come with. So the first oracle I would recommend is Susan Shepherd's Black Moon Astrology cards. Maybe the artwork pulls you in. I personally don't find the artwork so beautiful, but the interpretations are amazing. And the beauty of these cards is that they are actually quite large. You can hold them in your hands, and when you do, it just feels like you're holding a bit of the cosmos. I don't know why, maybe that's a silly interpretation, but that's the feeling I'm getting. It took me a while to get accustomed to the visuals. I do think the collages could have been a bit more better made, and the images, the colors could have been a little bit more focused, but the booklet is wonderful. I strongly recommend that you purchase this oracle book and study it, because Susan Shepherd gives you really interesting insights into lesser known parts. The booklet is excellent as well, because for each sun sign you also get an affirmation. For example, for Pisces you would get I believe. You also get the description of each of the astrological houses. You get the elements, you get the eclipses, the south node and north node. You also get a description of the part of fortune, the grand trine, the water energy, the yod, the grand cross. You get an explanation of a Jupiter return, a Saturn return, Mercury retrograde, and a void, of course, moon. So this is a really interesting resource if you want to tap into the slightly not so discussed or lesser known aspects of astrology, and Susan has a great way of putting together a lot of knowledge. For each of the chapters and the energy of the specific card, she also has a beautiful quote. Let's take, for example, Chiron, healing. It says here, there's a quote by Rumi that accompanies it. The wound is the place where the light enters you. Beautiful, right? So strongly recommend this deck. Now, contrary to Black Moon astrology cards, the second deck, the Numinous Astro deck, is incredibly stylish. I love the collages, and I love the way that they decided to depict this deck. It looks quite large when you purchase it, but the cards are actually quite tiny. They fit into your palm, and they are very hip, very cool. I just love it. I love to do collages in my free time, so as a collage artist or a part-time collage artist, I'm really thrilled to see how they applied this collage knowledge to astrology. However, the booklet is not that deep as Black Moon astrology. I would have to say that this is the classical example of form over content. If you are interested just in very brief and rather superficial explanations of the planets and the houses, then this is the booklet for you. It doesn't go into a lot of psychological interpretations. It doesn't use quotes or philosophical prompts in order to describe certain things. I do like the fact that it does focus on the aspects, so you get a lot of aspects, semi-sextiles, conjunctions, oppositions, quincunxes, and you get a description for what those mean. So that's actually quite good, because you don't get this in other astrological decks. But there is a feeling here that it's more about breadth than about depth, For example, you get here a pretty traditional understanding of what each sign means, and I do understand that the authors wanted to provide you with this important information, but I would have expected something slightly different from it. And even the way in which the information comes across, it's very hipster-like. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like there are no good and bad placements. Yes, there are. There are many negative placements in an astrological chart, but they do try to imbue it with this positive mindset. And I appreciate that. You know, I don't want to be too mean to it, but I would choose Black Moon astrology card any day over the numinous, even though the numinous is much more stylish in the way that the cards are depicted. Now, if you want a combination of visually enrapturing cards in combination with really good descriptions, I would strongly recommend Star Codes Astro Deck. This is incredible. It is so sweet, so tiny as well, so it's pocket size. You can sneak it into your bag as well. You can take it with you most places. And I love the fact that it has exactly the same kind of interpretations as the numinous in terms of the aspects that the planets are making, oppositions, squares, sextiles, but it also focuses a lot on solar activity. So you get interpretations of stages of solar calm, solar flares. There's a really beautiful focus here on solar light, and as a light worker, I am thrilled to see this happen. The cards in themselves are highly geometrical. There is something about sacred geometry in their design, and I am thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled to use them. I just love them so much. So Star Codes Astro Oracle by Heather Rowan Robbins is really a beautiful combination of style and also knowledge. Let me just take an example. Look, I opened the booklet at the 3rd house, and you get here an interpretation of what it means, then what action you can take with this card. You also get a challenge and a gift, depending on the position of the card, how it falls, or whether you want to actually see the lighter aspect, but also the shadow aspect of a specific placement. So I would strongly recommend this deck. I absolutely love it. And finally, this is such a sweet, sweet astrology deck. To me, it combines poetic watercolor paintings with the science and study of astrology. So we have here Heavenly Bodies Astrology, a little guidebook by Lily Ashwell. It is gorgeous, but in a very soft-spoken way. It is just something that feels like a great big hug. Very, very sweet. So we have here the traditional interpretations of the planets, the aspects, the houses. We also get a glimpse to the north and the south node of the moon. And we also have here the energetics of the deck. This is a really interesting aspect and something I haven't seen potentially in other ones, or it hasn't been so discussed. We have here the elemental differences between each of the planets and the astrological signs, but we also have a focus on yin and yang energy. Let me just show you. There we go. We opened that Pisces. We have here the description, the keywords, and also the omen. Omen is basically the divinatory interpretation of the card that comes up in a reading. I just think it's very beautiful. It's also, I'm getting a sense that this deck combines a little bit witchcraft and spell work with astrology. So I would strongly recommend it for those of you that are looking at a good primer. You're looking for an oracle deck that isn't too fancy, too academic or stylish, and prioritizes just good looks over content. This has content, this has a soft touch, and also a kind of witchy, spellcrafty kind of charm about it. So I would highly recommend this one. I do want to thank everybody that has been gifting me with these decks. I want to thank Wendy especially. She's the one that has donated both of these gorgeous astrology decks. And I also want to thank darling Caroline for gifting me this Astro deck. I also want to thank the person that has donated the numinous to my channel. I do think that this was Miriam. Miriam has been sending me so many decks that I kind of lost track. So thank you so much, Miriam, if you were the one that donated this to my channel. And thank you as well for all of you. You're all making the space here on the Spiritual Social a wonderful learning and exchange experience. And I will do my best to keep protecting this space and make it safe for you guys to continue to learn, grow, and evolve. Okay, so for the time being, these are the resources that I can put at your disposal. Make sure that you tune into my website, thespiritualsocial.com, where you can actually book a birth chart interpretation with me or a transit report. I'm going to link some of the things down in the description box below for your viewing pleasure. And until next time, happy studying, happy inspiration, and I cannot wait to see you in my next one. Bye!